This is why an African country cannot have a seat at the UN Security Council. Part 2. If you have not watched part 1, go and watch it so you can understand where we are coming from. But even if you are watching it for the first time, I want you to pay attention to what the president of Kenya said at the UN Security Council, to that speech. When you are done, I'm going to explain vividly into details from the feedback I got from your comment sections. I'm going to explain a lot of things. Watch this video.
You cannot claim to be the United Nations while disregarding the voice of 54 nations. It is not possible. Africa is no longer willing to wait on the margins of global governance while decisions about peace, security, and development are made without our understanding, without our perspectives, and without our voice. Africa's exclusion is not only unacceptable, unfair, and grossly unjust, it also undermines the very credibility of the United Nations, this organization. Africa dominates most of the Security Council agenda, provides some of the largest contingents of UN peacekeeping forces, and bears the heaviest costs of instability. Yet we remain the only continent without a permanent seat at the main table where decisions about our destiny are made.
Okay, you had that speech, right? That was from the president of Kenya. Brilliant speech, courageous one at that matter. Commend him. But listen, in the former video I did, the part 1 lecture, I told you in the previous lecture why an African country cannot be there. Why? I trace antecedent for you, telling you what United Nations stands for, telling you how it came from the League of Nations, why League of Nations came into existence, why it failed, how United Nations was bettered, where it was bettered, how it was bettered, who bettered it, what was the idea behind it. I told you the African countries that were there during the formation of United Nations. I told it was 30 charter countries, nations, if you wish. And I told you the African countries that were there in 1945 at San Francisco, 24th of October, officially. I told you that Liberia was there. Egypt was there, South Africa was there, Ethiopia was there. All the African countries were officially under colonization. I will tell you why I use the word officially under colonization. Some of you said, for South Africa, getting independence in the 90s, Egypt in the 90s, why are they there? I will explain, pay attention. You said, China, not fighting the war, in the Second World War. Why is it there? I will explain. Wait. You said, France was defeated by Germany. Why is it there? I will explain. Pay attention. Now, let's take first thing first. Have you ever asked yourself, why are there organs of United Nations? You had 6 organs in the United Nations. You had the General Assembly, the UN Security Council, you had the International Court of Justice, you had the Economic and Social Council, you had the Secretariat, you have the Trusteeship Council. These councils are there, these organs. But why did they make the UN Security Council to be the Why? Have you ever thought to yourself, why is the General Assembly not the strongest? Why is the UN Security Council? Why? Because that structure, that organ itself was created to reward the victors of the Second World War. It was created to lock power, to maintain dominance, that we are the superheads and not you. They knew that you would gain independence in future, that you will come to drag this position. Their predecessors in 1945 had already seen that in 2025, African nations would demand a seat at the table. It was locked. That's why they call themselves permanent members. Now I'm going to explain to you why these 4 African nations were there to sign the charter. Pay attention. We are going to start with Liberia. Liberia was not formally colonized by any European power. No, it was founded in the early 1800s. By who? By the freed African Americans through the American Colonization Society. it officially gained independence in 1847, becoming the first African modern republic. So in 1945, it was recognized as a sovereign state. So Liberia was there to sign a charter in 1945 in San Francisco. That has been established. South Africa. South Africa was not officially under colonization in 1945. Let me explain. That's why I'm the town crier. Pay attention. South Africa already had a self-governing dominion in 1910, although it was still tied to British foreign policy. It was dominated by the white minorities. So it was recognized to sign at the charter. Apartheid was in 1948, after the charter was signed in 1945. Are you getting the point? Egypt officially had an independence of Britain in 1922, but Britain still maintained and controlled Egypt's defense, foreign policy, and the Suez Canal till 1950. So Egypt was allowed to be in that charter in 1945. Do you get that point? Officially in 1922, but its defense, foreign policy, and Suez Canal was still under British heavy control till 1950. So Egypt was allowed to be at the charter in 1945 in San Francisco. Of course, Ethiopia was not colonized by anyone. They tried in the War of Adwa. They lost Emperor Menelik II and Empress Tahiti Bitu. Benito Mussolini came again in 1936. He could not succeed. So Ethiopia came in 1945 to sign the charter in San Francisco. We have established that one. China. You say, why is China there? Did she fight anything? You don't know, because you know. If you know, you would have known that China was invaded by Japan in 1937. In history, it is called the Second Sisi-Japanese War. China fought them, held them. You don't even know that in the Second World War, China had one of the most casualties. Over 10 million pi. Over 10 million pi in China. But that's not the reason why China is allowed to be in the Big Five. China was allowed to be in the Big Five because of what it did there. One, most importantly, because Roosevelt and Churchill argued that China had to be in the Big Five in order to represent Asia. Also to remove the previous champion, who was Japan, because the Axis power has lost the war. So they have to shift Japan from the side so China can maintain that dominance. Is that clear to you? France, yes. France was invaded by Germany. That's why after the war, France is now being recognized as Free France. But you have to understand something. France is part of the Big Five, not just because of her contribution in the Second World War, no, but because Europe wanted to maintain political dominance. So they included their own, which is France. And you need to understand, in as much as France was invaded by Germany, ultimately, France won the war because France belonged to the camp that won the war. The war was between the Axis and the Allied power. The Axis and the Allied power. The Allied power, you have the Soviet Union, United States of America, UK, that's Britain, and you had France, and then exclusively China. And then the Axis, you had Italy, led by Adolf Hitler, Japan, Emperor Hirohito, Italy, which is Benito Mussolini, and then later on Romania, Bulgaria, and Bulgaria came. You need to understand that this platform, United Nations, is owned by the victors. And history is written by the victors. That's why Chinua Achebe said, as long as the lions do not have historians, it is the exploit of the hunters that will be celebrated, rather than the bravery of the lions. Your story will not be told in the United Nations because they don't have historians. So it is the story of the exploiters that will be there. The exploit. That is their story that will be told. Some of you said, but Africa was in the war. Our soldiers were there. Oh, you don't know. You don't know. If you know, you would have known. You would have known that Agamemnon said to Hercules, history, remember kings, not soldiers. Yes, thousands of African soldiers were involved in the Second World War. Nigeria soldiers, Kenya, Ghana, yes, we were there, but as what? You were there as British and French colonies, not as a sovereign independent nation. So your contribution in the Second World War was credited to Europe, not Africa. Are you getting the point? You don't have to be emotional. You have to recognize it. Your contribution in the Second World War was credited to Europe, not you, because you were under colonization. Are you getting the point? That is how it is. The UN Security Council was created to lock power. It was created so that they can lock power to show you that we are the victors. So you cannot be included there. You must tell yourself the truth. But the question is, why are we begging to be included when we can stand alone and be great? Have you ever seen an African leader talking at the UN General Assembly? The seats are empty. Because when an African leader stands to talk at the UN General Assembly, everyone is going because nobody wants to hear what you're going to say. You don't have a military mind. You don't have an economic power. If they allow you to talk, you might tomorrow ask them for loan because you are disgracing us. You have to prove it to yourself and to us. That is when you'll be included in that table. Look at when the president of France is talking or that of Israel. They pay attention. But when you are talking, no one pays attention because your currency is nothing to write home about. That is what Kwame Nkrumah was saying to you in Casablanca in the early 1960s. That's what he said to you in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, that we need to unite. Because if we had united and have the United States of Africa, you will not be begging for a seat at the UN Security Council because they will beg you to be included. But because you are not united, that's why we do not have a place to say anything. I wish you understand that this platform of United Nations is being defined by the victors. You were not there when it was formed. The structures were formed for a reason, and the UN Security Council was formed to lock power. For who? For the victors. As long as the lions do not have historians, it is the exploits of the hunters that will be celebrated, rather than the bravery of the lions. The UN Security Council is celebrating the history and the story of the victors. Yes, you were in the Second World War. Your bravery is there, but as what? Credited to Europe. So you don't have historians. It will not be celebrated. You have to maintain your own structure. That is when you'll be recognized. Africa, wisdom is the principal thing. I hope you're done. I hope you understand. I do not condemn the speech of Kenyan president. I love it. It's a courageous one. It reminded me of Gaddafi. But you have to understand that our currency has to have meaning. Our currency has to have meaning. All the 55 African countries, our currency is nothing to write home about. And you want to sit at that table. Come on, it's a joke. Our people are still being rescued from the Mediterranean Sea and the Sahara Desert. And you want to be at the table. Tell ourselves the truth for crying out sake. Tell ourselves the truth. I don't want it to be lengthy anymore. Okay? Request for book I will give you to read. Support Modern Day Town Cry so we can get more book and give people to read. We must tell ourselves the truth. And truth shall set us free. I love you and I care about you. In my previous video, I called some African countries. Someone said I did not call Ethiopia because, sorry Togo, because I didn't get to alphabet T. Okay? So I'm going to call African countries. If you hear the name of your country, answer present in the comment section. I love you. Okay, let's go. I bless you. I bless you, Algeria, Angola, Benin, Botswana, Burundi, Burkina Faso, Chad, Cape Verde, Comoros, Cameroon, Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Republic of Congo, Ivory Coast, Egypt, Djibouti, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Eswatini, Ethiopia, Gabon, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Kenya, Libya, Liberia, Lesotho, Mali, Madagascar, Mauritania, Mauritius, Mozambique, Morocco, Namibia, Niger, Nigeria, Rwanda, Sao Tome and Principe, Seychelles, Senegal, Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, South Africa, Togo, Tunisia, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. I pray for you. All the African countries I've mentioned, I pray that the spirit and the grace for love will locate you, that we will begin to see one another as one. No more xenophobia. No more Nigeria must go. We must love ourselves because this is our time. Only when we love ourselves can we truly recognize our potential. Because for us to be great, we must tell ourselves the truth. And the time for Africa to be united has come. Because your time crier has come. And one day, we will recognize our potential because this generation will fix Africa. We will not beg to be included. They will beg us to be included. And for us to do that, we must unite. We must uphold unity in diversity. Africa, wisdom is a principal thing